Al Shanker, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. He came to Minnesota in 1988 to address an education reform seminar called the Itasca Seminar. And at that seminar, he mentioned something called charter schools. It was the first time I'd ever heard of that idea. And he had been thinking about it because he wanted something that would give more of a professional opportunity for teachers. He wanted them to take leadership. He wanted them to be able to do what they do best in the classroom, and that was to teach and have their decisions and their input count. So he suggested charter schools, and he told us that the districts could take their customers for granted, and he was right. The third visionary was a group, the Citizens League in Minnesota, a group of civic leaders from education, from unions, from the business community, all coming together to improve our school system. So what's interesting here is that chartering was an idea that came from outside the political system, outside the political system. It came from citizens. You know, as a public official, I learned something. I learned that when you step back as a public official, remove the barriers and let citizens take the lead, good things can happen. So why chartering? Chartering was to open up the K-12 public education system to allow people other than school boards to provide public education, parents and teachers. The key was to have outside choices so that the K-12 system would become more responsive. Why? Because as Al Shanker said, the school districts could take their customers for granted. And that's what chartering did. But what's interesting here is that Al Shanker and the charter advocates diverged later because he wanted to have chartering under a collective bargaining agreement, and the chartering advocates felt that would compromise autonomy. So here's the charter school bargain. In return for independence, the leaders of charter schools would commit to accountability and results. They'd put those results in the performance contract. They had to deliver on the results, or the school could be closed. That is more accountability than in our district schools today. I like to say it's trading regulation for results, bureaucracy for accountability. So let's get back to the story. Now we're in the legislative session of 1991, and I have introduced the chartering bill for the third year in a row in the Minnesota Senate. That wasn't the problem, the House was. So let's get back to the story. It's March 1991. Here's the climate when I introduced the chartering bill for the third time. First of all, we were controlled by a Democratic farmer-labor majority of legislators. Second, the powerful teachers' unions opposed chartering, and they had a great deal of influence with the DFL legislature. Third, the school boards did not like this idea at all. And fourth, the Republican governor did not like chartering because he had just defeated Governor Rudy Perpich with the help of a teachers' union. Why? Because Governor Perpich had promoted open enrollment. So this was the climate in which chartering was introduced. It became pretty testy and feisty pretty quickly when people realized it actually could pass. And this was the most difficult part for me as a legislator. I was about 36 years old, and I was in the position of having to do something that my friends didn't like. I was a union-endorsed Democrat, and a proud one.